Sukihantu and a very good evening to ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dhammadana series brought to you by Buddhist Mahavihara Malaysia. Today's session is also live on TBCM Facebook. Do subscribe to our FB for more information. The topic for tonight is I Hate to Waste a Perfectly Good Disaster by Ayya Sudhamma. A brief background of Ayya Sudhamma. She received novice ordination from Bhante Gunaratana at Bhawana Society in 1999 and received her higher ordination from the newly revived Bhikkhuni Sangha in Sri Lanka year 2003. She's calling in from Charlotte Buddhist Vihara, which she founded in year 2013. Without further ado, let's invite Ayya to join us in our live session. Good morning, Ayya, and welcome to our live session today. And I shall hand it over to you now.
Thank you. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Thank you, everybody who is tuned in here today. I rejoice with you and your good intentions to listen to Dhamma. And I hope that what I have to say will be of some use to you. You remember the story of the four horses that the Buddha explained to a troublesome monk about that you could learn from your own hard lessons, or you could learn from those of people close to you, or you could learn from people you had heard about near you, or you could hear stories from people far away and learn from those. Then he gave the illustration of the horses that it's like the farmer is coming out of the house to get the horses up and ready for work, and the alert, diligent horse hears that and leaps to his feet, thinking, what will the farmer have me work on today? Another one doesn't get up and wake up until the farmer's at the door. Then he does. Another doesn't wake up until the farmer is close. And the final one doesn't get any lessons, doesn't wake up, until the farmer actually prods him with a stick saying, hey, wake up, you. And so you don't have to be like that last one. Sometimes in my life, I've learned some things along the way, and I will share them with you. There was a time when I was picking blackberries along a road that led to the house I was renting on one side. On the other, when the road kept going, it led to a national or state park. Nobody was traveling that road in the middle of the day, very, very empty. And there were blackberries growing along the road, but the occasional person would walk by and pick them. So the area along the road was well picked. You had to reach pretty far out to get the good blackberries. And so I was reaching and reaching. And at some point, I suddenly went down. These blackberries were growing on the edge of a cliff. This road was a cliffside. The house was way up that way. The path is way up that way to the forest. This was a sure drop. And the ground just gave way beneath me, and I went down. I didn't go down far because the blackberries caught me. So I'm caught in blackberry vines, thorns up to here. And if I even move, I am afraid I will go crashing down to death or deadly suffering. And so I just hold perfectly still for a moment. And then I looked around and I saw I was able to reach the blackberries nobody could reach. No one. And so I filled my bag and I ate as many as I wished. And then I considered my situation. There would be no one driving by. There would be nobody likely to walk by. And even if there were, what could they do for me? I'm a bit down and out, away from the edge of the road. So that tangle of blackberry vines had really fooled me, It just gave way under my feet. So what I did was I felt around with my feet until I found some blackberry roots or thick vines that would possibly be strong enough to hold me. So I put my feet firmly on those and then carefully reached around and held onto vines, placing each finger in between thorns, both hands. Okay, now I'm more secure. And then I went forward towards the cliff a bit. And then I did it again. And forward towards the cliff a bit. And did it again. And then I hauled myself out. I had barely even a scratch on me. And when this was done, it hit me that this was a metaphor for my life. I'm sorry, I know it's a little bit close to a traditional Buddhist story that has different conclusions. But this is my story. That before I'd ever heard any of those stories. It was a metaphor for my life that when I had been down there looking around and realized that those blackberries were in reach, and so instead of panicking, instead of just despairing, I just went ahead and got these blackberries with the thought, I never want to be down here again. Let me get out of this what I can. I was recovering from cancer at that time. And I realized my attitude towards cancer. I don't want to go down this path again. I don't want to ever be here again. Let me get out of this what I can. And I did. And as I look back on my life and as things happen along the way, I still have that attitude. I don't want to be down here again. I don't want to suffer this lesson again. Let me get out of this what I can. I'm often the very slow horse. So why waste a perfectly good disaster? I don't know if you have this phrasing in your home country, but I grew up in southern U.S. My mother's a very thrifty middle-class woman, and she couldn't bear to throw out anything that might have some useful purpose later. Even a broken flower pot she figured could be used for something later. She would hold on to it and make use of it. And so I hate to waste a perfectly good bit of food or a perfectly good dress that someone else could use or whatever. Like nothing got thrown away except real trash, real garbage. If there was any use to anything, my thrifty, careful mother would find some good use for it. Whenever there's pain, difficulties, disappointment in my life, because I'm the slow horse, many times, not every time, many times, when there's difficulty, pain, disappointment, why waste it? That's a hard-earned lesson. It's as though I had put $1 million into something. Don't just walk away from it. Recycle it. Find some other use for it. Use it. Get some good lessons. The number one thing I want you to get from this talk is that, in my experience, once I had my feet on a spiritual path, absolutely no disaster has gone without value. No matter how painful, no matter how disappointing, every rotten thing that happens to me or has happened to me turns out to have some benefit. Now, the benefit may be to me right away, or the benefit may be something that I can share with other people, and I have the blessing of helping other people through a difficulty. To me, that's also a blessing. We have a saying here, and I'll allow my regional dialect to show for a moment. We have a saying that life gives you lessons and blessings. There are only lessons to be learned or blessings to be gained. Lessons and blessings. That's how we say it. And so, how does that work? Well, you are either enjoying the blessings of the good past good karma. Not that Southern Americans tend to think of good karma, but that is the way it works. We're either benefiting from good past karma, or we are suffering something that we will learn a lesson from. I would like to argue that there are only blessings and blessings, no matter how rotten. So, hang on a second. I'm going to make a note of something I want to say later. There was one occasion that I learned, well, I'll tell you what I learned in a moment. Let me tell you the disaster first. The disaster was that I moved into a big house shared with a few other women, or actually I interviewed to move into this house shared with other women. It was in a beautiful place. It was actually that place that was right by that forest near the blackberry vines that nearly got me killed. Anyway, I was interviewing to move into there. My husband had just left. I was just recovering from cancer. And I interviewed with two of the ladies there. They liked me. They wanted me to move in, but there was a third one I was supposed to interview with. So I waited for her, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And then she let me know. She sent a message that she just was too involved with things and she couldn't meet with me. Could I come back? Well, that was a bit pushing it, but I did. I drove an hour, again, another occasion, just to meet with her. And I waited and I waited. Eventually, she came down the stairs, blew past me with the words, "I just don't have time for this," and ran out the door. Didn't make a good impression on me. The other roommate said, "Don't worry, she's moving out." Okay, she's moving out. So I moved in. She didn't move out. And it was bad. It was bad. Miss Entitled there were 5 shelves in the bathroom where one could store their things. Her stuff was all over all 5. I went to her, I said, "Look, she and I were sharing the upper floor. We were sharing that bathroom." I asked her to share the shelves. She said, "You can use the shelves down the hall." I had a cat that was extremely old. I had adopted it off the street when it was already very, very old. It had a thyroid problem, I think now in retrospect. It made yowling noises. It upset everybody in the house. This woman rallied everyone to tell me I had to get rid of my cat. I was exhausted from cancer, from moving, from divorce. I had no energy to move. And I was going to have to put the cat down. I was new to Buddhism. I didn't have the idea that you just don't do that. Anyway, I was going to do that. And at the last minute, the ex-husband, with lots of swearing and anger, took the cat so that it didn't get put down. This woman acted in these rejecting, unpleasant, entitled ways that I found very difficult to deal with. But no worries. She went out of town for a long time. She was drumming. She did drumming. She was a white woman who often wore her long blonde hair in kind of dreadlocks, and she would drum with a group, do Hawaiian drumming with a group from Hawaii. And she pronounced Hawaii, Hawaii, which I also didn't like. And she lived on who knows what. She seemed to be from a wealthy background. She just had money, lots of it. Um, so she was out of town for a while. I settled in, everything's fine. Then she came back. I was still recovering from cancer. I was not working. She had an invisible means of support. She wasn't working. We were both in the house all the time. At that time, I was keeping 8 precepts at home long term. I would make my big meal of the day, and like a big meditative thing, I'm making that meal. And she would come down the stairs yakking on her mobile phone. It was the first mobile phone I'd ever seen. It was a long time ago. And she would sit in the one large room on that floor, the kitchen, dining area, lounge area, and yak at the top of her voice while I'm trying to be meditative. It got to where when I heard her footsteps on the stairs, my stomach would clench with hate. I hated her. I hated her with passion. She was so unkind to me that one time a visitor of hers who stayed for a weekend pulled me aside and said, "I'm so sorry. I don't know why she's treating you like this. I've never seen her act like this." And I said, "All I've ever seen from her." It didn't help that she'd named herself after a goddess. Think something like Gaia or Artemis. She was into Hinduism. She wore white a lot because she was so into her religion. I wasn't impressed. It also didn't help that she was so extraordinarily tall, extraordinarily blonde, extraordinarily pretty, and her waist was about that big. She hit every button. My hatred was killing me because I was recovering from cancer, a really bad cancer, and I was still so weak. And the hatred was consuming me, and I didn't have anything left over to live on when I was absorbed with so much hate. And I realized that my hate had to stop. And people advised me to pray for her, that was a cat, to pray for her, to have loving kindness, and all I could come up with was, "May the such and such be well, happy, and peaceful. May the such and such," I'm not going to say the words, "be happy." But I kept at it day by day. You see, my desperation increased because it truly, truly was killing me. I had to overcome this hate or else I'd get sick again. My cancer might relapse. I was in a precarious situation, or just my organs could give out. I really did not have the life energy for this much hate. And so I started wishing her to have everything I wanted, to have just, all goodness and friends and everything that I wanted. And one day I became so desperate to overcome my hate that I wished that Gaia get enlightened before me. And I meant it. And I wished it with all my heart. And within about 24 hours, she came to me and she said, "Wow, I realized that all these bad vibes I've been getting weren't coming from you." She told me that her soulmate had had a motorcycle accident and had been in the intensive care unit of a hospital, near death, in apparently agony, and she was feeling it from a distance, and it coincided with my moving in, and so she had blamed me for her distress. And once she realized her distress was from her psychic connection to her partner, her soulmate, then she realized that I was innocent, and she had, I'm sorry, I need to speak up a little, and she had no more problem with me. Now, this woman had been tormenting me at that point for months. And I just stared at her and I said, "What, you expect me to be happy with that?" With that realization, I said, "You've been pushing me out of this house for months." She said, "Oh, you're right. I'm sorry." And she invited me to go on a walk with her in that forest nearby. We did. And she shared everything. And I started sharing everything. And don't you know, we became friends? Then I had a dream about her guru. Her guru was Amici, the hugging guru. And she said, oh, no, no, nobody dreams about it. It was a beautiful dream, an amazing, very, very spiritual thing. And she said, oh, nobody dreams about Amachi unless Amachi's sending for you. Come meet my guru. I met her guru. She was delightful. And so we had that in common too now. And I mean, I didn't go to that religion, of course. Buddhism is the only one for me. But I was really impressed with this deva-like being. And and then she announced that she was moving away. And I was crushed because I loved her. Metta changed everything like that, just switched it. And I discovered from that terrible situation that metta really works. When I really meant it, it really works. I have one other metta really works story that I want to share with you. I was meditating in the carport here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I had a very bright lamp on, and I was thinking, this lamp is too bright, it's night, it's lighting me up to the neighborhood. I feel insecure because maybe someone will come and shoot me because they don't like Buddhist, or because they just think it's a funny target with the bald head, or maybe because they're right-wingers, or because they're fundamentalist Christians who don't like this sort of thing. I just didn't feel comfortable, but I thought, look, there's 12 minutes left on the timer. What could possibly go wrong? And then the gunshots rang out. 3 gunshots, very, very close, from a car that had just swung around the corner and started shooting, and it was about 30 feet away from me. I'd been sitting with a cat in my lap. I jumped up just straight. I mean, I knew they were shooting at me. I jumped straight up. The cat in my lap went flying across the carport. And I scurried into the house, and I was terrified. I was shaking. I was closing the blinds, and I was disappointed because my metta hadn't prevented the fear. Later, I realized that the car wasn't shooting at me. They didn't even see me. They weren't worried about me. They were shooting at the car right behind them. They pulled around the corner. The car behind them went past, and they were shooting at them. But yeah, that happens. It happens a lot, actually. I used to keep a list. I used to keep by my bed a record of the gunshots nearby that I would report to police. I stopped keeping a record. They never asked me about them. I just called 911. Called them again at midnight last night. It's just what you do here. So anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to horrify 90% of the audience. I talked to a meditation teacher I was working with at that time, the wonderful laywoman, Shaila Catherine. And I told her my disappointment that my metta had failed. And she said, well, are you angry with them? I said, no. You don't hate them? Oh, of course not. She said, then your metta worked. The metta worked. I had no ill will towards them. They were stupid, but I had no ill will towards them. I wanted the police to, of course I called 911. I wanted the police to catch them if it was a benefit to them. I didn't want the police to catch them if it wouldn't benefit their spiritual situation. I just wanted what's best for them. I don't want them to get bad karma. I want them to have a calmer life. So the metta worked. So those are 2 stories to tell you from a couple of lessons in my life that metta works. Another lesson in my life is follow your intuition. One aspect of that, first time I got that one, really got that one, was I was walking down the street in San Francisco, about to cross the street, and a car came out of, it was just a little alley, and a car came zooming out of that alley so fast. It was going up a hill and down, and it was airborne. It was going so fast. And as it sped past, I had the sinking feeling of and the thought that someone's about to die, someone's going to die. And it's true. They were kids who had carjacked a car, and they ran into a car and they killed some people. Or right then. The intuition bit is that I was about to cross the street, and then something said, "Stop." Stop. Why stop? And then the car flew by. It was the first time I went, oh, this business of intuition is important. I started really paying attention. I've discovered that every time I've ignored my intuition, I've regretted it. And every time I have obeyed my intuition, it has brought blessings. It's been amazing. One of the downsides of my life was that after I'd gone through cancer, I'll tell you a bit about cancer later, I suppose. But after I'd gone through the cancer, my life was in a do-over situation. My husband had had a nervous breakdown and left me. So the marriage had crumbled. I'd been a lawyer, and I didn't have a mind for things that didn't involve spiritual development. I couldn't put in my mind. I used to be happy reading a contract for 5 hours without moving, and now I did not have the mind for that at all. I was starting my life over, and I had a dream in which a woman older than old came to me and said, "So," my name then was Catherine, "So, Catherine, will you join us?" And on waking and thinking about it later, it hit me. It was about ordination, what I ordained. My life was starting over, and all I wanted was spiritual development full time. I had no energy, no interest in anything. When people talked about normal things, I would lose energy. Food, restaurants, movies, television shows, sports. One useless conversation could literally put me in bed for 2 days of exhaustion. I had no ability to deal with those sorts of things, but talking about disability, aging, sickness, death, spiritual matters, I could talk about that or listen to that for a long time, and it only gave energy. It didn't steal energy. I wanted spiritual development. After the husband had left, I'd moved to that house with the women, and then I wasn't able to work, and I couldn't come up with the next rent I knew, so I gave notice, lived on my last month's rent, found a place to live with a woman who was disabled, and I would brush her teeth and put her in her pajamas and get her up in the morning and that sort of thing. And that was how I was living. And the day came that so I had that dream, and my heart leaped at the idea of becoming a monk. And at that time, there was a monk visiting that area, and I went to see him. He looked at me across the room, and he sent a layman to tell me that I could wear white, and I could live in a temple and take care of the monks, cook and clean. But I could never, he didn't say that. He said you could keep 8 precepts, and you could wear white, but I could never become a monk. I wanted to become a monk, to be like the monks who had inspired me with Buddhism. I guess I do have to tell the cancer story to give a little of the background of that. Such a long story. In brief, because of cancer, I found Buddhism through monks, and they're being there for me, and they're teaching me, and they're giving me Buddhism. I hung onto it like a life raft during long cancer treatments. And so when I had that dream and realized it was about ordination, I wanted to be like those wonderful monks from Thailand who had introduced me to Buddhism, who had given me what I needed in my time of desperation. Actually, they gave it to me just before the symptoms became acute. So I found Buddhism just before the symptoms hit. I like to think that the day was choreographed, this whole thing. I met the monks right when I was just starting to have asthma. It turned out later that the asthma was fluid from the cancer getting in my lungs. See, so they came just at the right time. And it was intuition that had told me to go to that New Year's Day meditation with the Thai monks, January 1, 93. Anyway, picking up my story again, I'd had that inspiration. I realized that I wanted to become a monk later that same day, that I knew I wanted to be a monk. I'm in a room together with an elder monk, and he sent a layman across the room without my having said a word to him. He sent this layman across the room to tell me that I can't become a monk. I could wear white and keep 8 precepts. And I was devastated, absolutely devastated. I even wondered if I could stay with the Dhamma, if the Buddha was like this, if it's like this. No idea it was like that. But then it hit me one day that it'd be a great shame to give up the best thing I'd ever come across just because I couldn't get past my own inner pain. So I would accept the Dhamma. But it hurt bad. When I would hear the monks chant a certain recitation where they added these words that they have the bhikkhu training and livelihood, it was like a knife to my gut. When I saw men who learned about Buddhism around the same time I did, young men, get to move into a monastery and then they become a novice and then they become a monk. And I'm still in my life, despite having stronger wish of anyone that I'd ever known. I mean, I met meeting all kinds of Buddhists. No one had the drive that I had to ordain. I mean, they all had drives, but I wanted it like Ratapala. If the guy in the scriptures, Ratapala, the Buddha praised him as number one of the monks in in his determination to ordain. He had laid down on the family compound floor, refusing food and water, was going to die unless his parents allowed him to ordain. So they gave in. He ordained. He became one of the great ones. I wouldn't become one of the great ones, but I had that drive. If all I had to do was lay down and give up food and water, are you kidding? I'd do 100 times that. That's nothing. If that would have gotten me ordination, it would have gotten me nothing but a trip to the hospital. It wouldn't have gotten me ordination. The forces against it were too strong. It wasn't doable. But I sure would have done it in a heartbeat. Anyway, so I was so appalled, but I continued to learn the Dhamma. At that time I was living right by Spirit Rock Meditation Center. I'd been taking care of that disabled lady who happened to be in the neighborhood. I was learning about Buddhism from Western sources and from Thai monks and a Cambodian monk and in San Francisco. And I was keeping 8 precepts for long periods of time. And then I had that dream and I knew I couldn't do it. I was just devastated. And there was a 3-week period where I was face planted weeping into my pillow about an hour a day at least for 3 weeks because I wanted to be a monk and I cannot. And a trusted advisor said to me, if anyone could do it, you could. And I'm like, you don't understand. It can't be done. The day came that the words popped into my head, something like November 5th. Like, November 5th, what? I'm going forth. I'm leaving the home. I'm leaving home life November 4th. I was going to go stay in a temple or who knew what? Probably stay lay person, but it was just time to go and find whatever was out there for me. The drive was so strong. The question of my sanity was so strong. I was sorting through booklets. You go to various meditation centers, they give you a little booklet. I didn't read most of them, but I had a stack like that from various monasteries and temples and places. And so I was giving some to the prison project and giving some to friends. I'm sorting through them. I'd had them in a little storage space. I'm standing on a ladder up at the storage space, flipping through them, blah, blah, blah. And something said, look at that one. I'm looking at it. And it said, look at that one. I'm like, I actually looked up and went, okay, I'm looking at it. Oh, this booklet. It was an excerpt from 8 Steps. It was an excerpt from Mindfulness in Plain English by Bhante Gunaratana. This was before internet was a thing, and at least any known to people generally. And I saw, finding a temple was very hit and miss. I saw the picture of the monk and I saw the address in the booklet. I'm like, hey, this might be a monastery. I was in California. It was on the East Coast. I just took the whole booklet and tucked it into my address book and kept going. And I traveled overseas briefly. I came back. That was not a good place for nuns for me. I literally kissed the earth when I got back to America. Literally put my lips to the ground. I was so glad not to go to that place. And I was planning to. I was visiting my parents in North Carolina, and I was planning to go to Australia. I'd met a monk in the States who was from Australia who had said I could visit his monastery. So I was going to go there. I had a ticket to California, and I wrote to that monastery, asking them, what they were about, and they wrote, or I phoned them, I don't remember now, and they sent me a package in the mail with a newsletter and information about them. In the newsletter, they had information about one of their nuns planning to become a bhikkhuni. And so I made a visit there. I was just going to stop by. I asked about them. People said it wasn't like a nun community. It wouldn't be a good place to ordain. But anyway, I just decided to stop by there before going to California, sorting my stuff out in storage, and then going on to Australia. And so I took a train to DC. A friend in DC, Washington, DC, drove me out to this place in West Virginia, near Virginia border. And then once I arrived, the next morning, I was sitting in the meditation hall, and Bhante Gunaratana walked in, and I could feel him coming in. It was astonishing. And this place was spacious and beautiful. And it hit me that anywhere I went in the world, I would be looking for that place, the Bhavana Society. And after a couple of weeks there, I was almost, my visit limit was almost up. And or almost a couple of weeks. It was almost up, and I was cleaning hard. I worked hard, and Bhante Ji was showing a visitor around, and the visitor said, "Oh, and who is this?" And I opened my mind to say, "Oh, I'm just visiting briefly." And Bhante Ji said, "She lives here." And that was how my residency began. It all started with something telling me to look at that booklet. Later, I left the Bhavana Society to go find a place to be with a women's community, because I was the only nun in the monastery. That was the only female resident, and that's very, very hard. Very hard. Don't recommend it. I don't even recommend mixed communities, really. I think that the men overshadow the women so much, and women make themselves so small. It's very hard to make good progress in those conditions. Just my opinion. So anyway, I visited a community of nuns, and while it wasn't for me there, but while I was there, this was a community in England. Something just told me time to go to Sri Lanka. Okay. So my father was alive then. He bought my ticket, and I didn't know anyone in Sri Lanka. And at that time, I'd left Bhavana, so I didn't turn to Bhante Ji for recommendations. I I didn't know anybody, but I'd met a woman once at a conference, and for some reason, I had kept her name and phone number. She's like, "Oh yeah, ever go to Sri Lanka? Come visit me." And I called her up. She said, yeah, come. I'll take care of you completely. It just happened to be, I didn't realize this for a very long time. This happened to be Mrs. Ranjani De Silva, who organized ordinations for about half the bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka. Something had told me to keep her name and number, I suppose. Something told me to call her, this stranger. Something told me to trust this stranger. I went to Sri Lanka. She took care of me totally. And while I was there, an ordination was organized for uh, uh, Ajahn, what did I call her? Ajahn? Venerable Dhammananda of Thailand, very famous person who became a bhikkhuni, now a very famous bhikkhuni in Thailand. Thailand's first bhikkhuni in this color robes, at least in modern times. So it was organized for her, and it was the forwarder's ordination. And I got in on her coattails, so to speak. And that's how I had my higher ordination. So, oh, and Bhante Ji emailed his congratulations. So even though I was no longer at Bhavana, he was kind enough to send his approval. So that was a beautiful thing. So yeah, follow your intuition. That's one of my life lessons I want to directly share. I want to talk a little bit more about how lessons can be not only lessons but blessings. So I mentioned earlier, every bad, rotten thing that's ever happened to me has turned out to be useful later. And I want to convince you that this may be true in your own life as well. So that's why I want to delve into it. One time, I was staying at the Bhavana Society, and I was out of town. When I came back, everyone's looking at me funny. I don't know why, but they're looking at me funny. Okay, whatever. And there was a little women's retreat I was leading or helping lead, and I did that. And then I found a letter in my mailbox here at the monastery. And in that mailbox was a letter from Pandit Ji that he had put there and gone out of town. And this letter listed all the things I had done wrong and punishment that I was going to have to suffer for it. I don't remember what it was, not traveling, not teaching for a while. I don't remember. It didn't matter what the punishment was. It was mostly symbolic. It was the fact that there was punishment. It was the fact that everybody had been talking about me while I was gone. And these 13 or so things that I had done wrong, not one of them was true. Not one. I really, really wanted to get something out of this shake up, this horrific thing that was happening here. And I couldn't, because none of them were true. For example, a board member had reported to Bhante Ji that I'd left little bossy notes all over the women's dorm and bathroom area, and she'd had to go and just remove all these bossy notes that I'd left, and she just really judged me for that. And so I was exhorted in that same letter not to leave bossy notes, and that was part of the reason why I was being punished. And I racked my brain for even one note that I'd written. I didn't have a single note in there, not one. Actually, I'd had some earlier, and an even bossier person had removed them all and put her own notes up. So all of the notes there were either from that one person or had been community decisions that another nun that we'd had at the time there had written out during community meetings. There was not one note by me in there, but they all believed it. And let's see, there was another one. There was a man who had complained about me that I'd been rude to him in the library. I was the librarian. It was my official duty, main duty, along with everything else that needed doing. It seemed anyway. That was my main duty. And this guy was in the library, and he reported me for being rude to him. What had actually happened was that he was so rude to me that when he needed to get a book that was near the foot of my chair, he actually shoved my chair without even saying anything like, excuse me, I need that book. That man was like psychotic. He was not right. And I had been patient and kind to him and had walked away with the lesson. This is good. I have stretched my ability to be patient and kind with such a horrible person. And I'm really glad to learn that I can do that. And that incident, when I had actually been patient and kind to someone who was truly horrible, was listed among the things that I'd done wrong. I felt so victimized. And the worst one, the one that was very, very serious and might have led to further consequences, was that I had told the carpenters that had come to the, that had been working on an outbuilding in the monastery, that there was a time thing. They needed to get this outbuilding renovated. When I say outbuilding, I mean a building that's far away from the main buildings, kind of deeper in the woods, a property that had been purchased, that had been adjacent to the Bhavana Society woods. So it was a time thing they needed doing, and they reported to the community that I had told them to stop making noise and go away. And I absolutely denied it. And Bhante Rahula went back to the carpenters and they insisted I had done it. And I was crying. I was just baffled. Like, what is going on here? And so we had a meeting between Bhante Rahula and the carpenters and me and a guy in the monastery who I felt would be a fair witness. And I really felt like my residency might be on the line here, because you just don't go telling carpenters to leave. Like, that was just outrageous. And so the carpenters explained why they were saying it. And as they were talking, it hit me what had happened. I was managing a retreat, and I was the only person in the tea area, the foyer where people enter the building. And two men had driven up in a pickup truck, local guys, strong accents, West Virginia. And the guy had come in, and my ear was not attuned to him as he came in. I wasn't aware someone not part of the retreat was entering the door. And then when I tuned in, he had already said who he was, I think. Probably said he was the carpenter. I didn't hear that. And so I turned and I welcomed him. Oh, hi. He was clearly a local guy. He's like in overalls and such. And I said, oh, hi, welcome. Are you here for the retreat? He said, no. Well, we often had visitors just walking around the grounds and checking out things, local people. And I said, well, welcome to you. You're welcome to just, stay around the grounds, see everything, but just please try not to distract the people in the retreat. Try not to make any noise, and you're welcome. He goes, well, I'm here with my partner. Like, okay, yeah, you're both welcome. Just, please be careful not to make noises that would distract the retreat. But it's a retreat. Everybody's doing the retreat thing. You're welcome to come and sit in the back of the hall if you like. If you want to, just be very quiet. Just kind of slip in, slip out. You can do that. Well, I'll know. And he left. And I never thought about it again. That was the carpenter. I had just told the carpenters to be quiet. And he said, well, I don't think I can do that. I'm like, well, maybe this isn't the right time for you to visit. Something like that. Just very gentle, very sweet. Oh, maybe another time. When we're not in retreat, we have lots of times that we're not in retreat. And he left. Never thought about it again until the guy was right there in front of me. And then, oh, that's who it was. And we all had a good laugh. But I was still stuck with the rest of this letter that said all these terrible things, none of which was true. And what can I do with that? And it hit me that they believed it because there was reason to believe it. I was a bossy person. I was sometimes arrogant. They believed all these negative things about me because they were traits that they had seen in me. Maybe not as bad as some of these things, like the carpenters. But I trended in that direction, and they'd noticed it. So I could take that letter and say, not true, not true, not true, not true, and toss it away. Or I could take that letter to heart and say, my community has reflected something back to me. Let me learn. And I still cried, but I learned. And that letter is still right here in my heart. They were wrong on every point, but they were right. And I had to let them be right in order for me to grow. I want to tell you another story. What is the time? You said it's already 45 minutes already passed. What is the time now? Oh, it's gotten rather long. You know what? Consider this closed. I'm not going to give any additional closing other than to wish that you can learn from my lessons, like the truly shrewd horse that wakes up right when the farmer leaves the house, not waiting to get poked like me. But I'm going to go ahead and add another story because I want to. So continue to tune in if you've got the time for this. If not, please, welcome to tune out and go with my blessings. So when I had left the Bhavana Society seeking a place that had female monastics, I landed at a certain monastery, I won't name. Bhavanti Ji had required that I go somewhere that he approved rather than this whole itinerary that I had laid out for myself of female-friendly places. And this place, I didn't know anything about them. I just knew they had one nun there. And I had met her, and she got the invitation for me. So this is what I did. And it's making it a very long story. Point is that I landed into a place that I'd not investigated first, and it was not suitable. The people there mostly did not speak English, and the nun was very harsh, and the weather. I can't describe too much more without saying where it was, but the weather made it such that I could not travel about. I was kind of trapped there. And then a situation of domestic violence became very clear. And the day came that a monk had to go to the emergency room with a knife cut on the back of his hand and with some ridiculous story about how it had happened. And I knew who had knifed him. He'd been alone with that person. And I was terrified of that person because that person had been bullying me and threatening me. And it got so where if I was alone with that person, I was wondering if I needed to hide the knives. I was so terrified. And I got out of there very, very quickly. So my stay there wasn't very long at all. And I was traumatized. And the next place I went was I landed at a retreat in Massachusetts, USA, at Insight Meditation Society. And I was a mess. I was traumatized. I'd never been in domestic violence. I'd never been so scared in my life. And I'd never experienced anything like that. And the retreat's going on, and I keep crying. And they were doing energy exercises, Qigong. Ajahn Suchito, wonderful Ajahn Suchito of England, was leading this retreat. He was leading us in energy exercises. I couldn't do them at all. My energy was all blocked up. And one day I was leaving the room where we'd been doing the Qigong, and I was starting to cry again. I couldn't even hold my arms like this for more than a second. Like I was just a mess. And a very friendly voice entered my head saying, 99 other people on this retreat. Like, yeah, it was a retreat. It was by monastics with a lot of lay people there. 99 other people on this retreat, literally 99. And then there's you. You're the only one who's crying. You, this voice said in my head, are a disgrace to the Sangha. Oh, that's true. I'm a disgrace to the Sangha. I'm such a failure. I failed at Bhavana. I didn't really, but after I gave notice, I was told I had to leave. So it was it felt like a failure. I noticed that I was going to go around to other places, then I was told I had to go. So that felt like a failure. And I I just was a homeless nun. I had nobody backing me. It was 10 preceptor. No, it wasn't. Yes, I was. I was a 10 preceptor still at that time. That was before I'd gone to England and then Sri Lanka. And I just felt completely defeated. And I knew the Sangha needed me to get out. I was a blight. I was a unpleasant spot. I was something that brought the whole Sangha down. I was ashamed of the Sangha. And my shoulders slumped. I crumbled forward. I felt like I was just, this tall. I was so crushed. And I knew I was going to have to disrobe. And then it hit me that voice was the voice of Mara, the evil one. I don't take a stand on whether the evil one is truly an independent entity, conscious entity, or whether it's a terrible voice of doubt that wants to destroy a person. Everyone has, I think, everyone but fully enlightened ones have, or some stage of enlightenment ones have, a voice inside them that wants to crush them. And when they obey the voice, then the voice will crush them further and jump on their heads when they're down. Like it'll just push them further and further down. There's no far down, how far down you can go, that the voice of destruction won't want you to go even further down. So that might be Mara. There could be like multiple Maras, many minions of Mara. There could be like one main Mara that goes and harasses people when it's really important stuff like ordination. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The voice of doubt or the minion or Mara himself, something got in my head and said that to me and crushed me. And when I realized it was Mara, my life came surging back and I said, I see you, Mara. I see you. And then I said, okay, Mara, I'm not going to say it directly to you because that's not very nice. I said, you want me to disrobe? I tell you what then, Mara, you want me to disrobe? I'm going to do the opposite. I'm not going to disrobe for the next 2 years, even if it kills me, even if it takes my life. No matter what happens to me, I am not disrobing in the next 2 years. How do you like that, Mara? And I had this mental image of whatever that was, this being, or whatever it was, shrinking and vanishing, just like in the scripture. I was like, and I stuck to it. I had so much energy. Will not do that to me, Mara. When the voice of doubt comes, defy it. When that voice of wanting to crush you comes, if I had disrobed, do you know what that voice would have done? It would have come back and told me I was a failure in robes. It would have said, you were in robes and you were a failure. Maybe it would have done that. It would have taunted me. There's no winning with that voice. It's an inner bully. It's like, high school girls harassing another girls, being mean to her. That voice will tell you you're too fat, your nose is too this. It'll tell you that your hair is too thin or that you are too skinny. It'll tell you that you've never done successfully at anything and you should give up. It'll tell you every terrible thing an enemy would say to you. And it's coming from your own head and you must defy it. You need an adhitthana to defy it and say, I don't care. I don't care what you say. I'm not going to do cool sculpting to remove the belly fat. I'm going to love myself as I am, no matter what, Mara. I'm not going to do Botox or get rid of my wrinkles. Mara, how do you like that? I'm not going to give up my career just because of a setback, Mara. I'm not going to this or that or the other. When it's that crushing voice of doubt that will jump on your head once you have fallen down through the floor, you must defy it, or it will dominate you and get stronger and stronger and stronger, just like a bully. No bullies allowed in this mind. No bullies allowed in this mind-body complex. The bully rarely comes up. If it does, I'm like, well, that was a mean comment now, wasn't it? When it tells me that talk wasn't very good, I'm like, was that really a nice thing to say? Oh, mind, really? Really? You're going to tell me that? I did my best. Shut up. Now, when after I made that determination, I had 2 years of occasional serious difficulties. Mara would come to me and say, "Hey, how about this disrobing?" And I'd say, "No, 2 years, Mara." No, I would say, "Yeah, 2 years." And when 2 years were up, Mara came and said, "2 years." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm happy right now. Get out of here." And he slunk away again. Every now and then, Mara would test me and tell me something like, like that business of, "Oh, that talk you gave was useless. Oh, you ran over time. Oh, they're bored with you." And then I'll say, "Okay, it's true. What's your point, Mara? What's your point?" What's your point is a slightly aggressive rejoinder, comeback when someone's not being very nice. Okay, so what? What's your point? Well, you're getting fat as a nun. Okay, so I'm getting fat. So what? What's your point? There's no point. It's bullying. So my first go-to is, "What's your point, Mara?" And Mara knows he's been seen and he runs away. But if you haven't ever taken a stand against your inner Mara, that voice of doubt, that crushing drive to destroy what's good in your life, you may need to do an aditama, a firm determination to go against whatever that terrible, mean, bullying voice has advised, so that it'll know its place. Its place is not here. I'm going to say one thing about the cancer. It wasn't an easy cancer. It was a call your parents in because she may not make it cancer. It was a near-death experience multiple times cancer. It was treatments go on and then treatment fails cancer. It was get treatment that's just stop being experimental cancer, including basically bone marrow transplant. So what's the good in that? When the bone marrow transplant took hold, they'd know when it took hold, if it took hold. They would know by checking what's in my blood. If I was producing white blood cells, I was living on antibiotics and antifungals and antivirals and a vacuum seal kind of room that pushes the air out of my room to not allowing outside air in, and so on and so on. Like I had no immune system. They knew I would live from the there's an autologous bone marrow transplant for lymphoblastic lymphoma, for anyone who's curious from a medical background, with a large tumor in the mediastinum that had pleural effusion, as I mentioned before. Okay, just for the medical people there in listening. They would know it had worked. And again, this was 1993, fall of 93, at the UCSF. When the blood values went up, when the white blood cells showed up, they would know, the nascent bone marrow stem cells are doing their job. They found the bone marrow and they're producing. And someone told me wrongly that had happened, and then I rejoiced, and then I was crushed to hear that someone had just misread something, or I don't know what happened. So then a doctor told me that my values were up, the white blood cells were there. I'm like, okay. And he goes, "No, really, you have more white blood cells than I do." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then I went into my hospital room and lay down on the bed, and the thought came to me, I'm going to live through this. And I'm going to be able to help other people in future going through horrific medical things. And then only when it was in the context, the prism, the point of view of, oh, I'm going to live and be able to help other people, that it hit me, I'm going to make it through this thing. And then I rejoiced. I knew 2 people who had the same procedure who did not make it. And actually, they put me in the same room that one of them had been in. One of the near-death experiences was her coming up from the ICU and telling me to go with her because she just discovered that she could go to God, and she was pulling on me. That happened. Okay, anyway, my point being that I realized that I would be able to help other people with all the horrific medical things I had gone through. And I have. And I've helped people with their divorces. And I've helped people with their horrific childhood things. I had an extreme trauma in my childhood. I was on vacation with some other family and family friends. My family never knew what happened to me. These people cleaned me up and sent me home, and I was unable to speak. I had PTSD so heavy that a therapist once told me when I asked her, "Why does this take so long?" I was doing EMDR, eye movement therapy. Why does it take so long to help with this PTSD? And she told me she was an expert at it. She told me I had one of the heaviest burdens she had worked with. I don't regret anything that happened to me because it has given me this deep well of goodness to pull on. I help people who have horrific PTSD, and I wouldn't give that up for anything. I help people with their divorces. I help people with their medical situations. I help people with when they feel rejected. I help people when they hate themselves, because I did for a long time. I hate people with all kinds of difficulties and problems and situations. And every now and then I go, that bad thing too becomes useful? Who knew that that bad thing could become useful? And I get to help another person with something else. There was a woman who was um, very demographically very, very different from me. And I was mentoring her. Like, you couldn't imagine more different. And every now and then she'd come up with some terrible thing that had happened. I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, that happened to me too. And she's like, that happened to you too? Yeah, that one too. And then something else and something else and something else. And I joked one time, I'm so glad I've had such a rotten life that I can be of service to you. And she laughed. And I said it again another time. And it became this joke between us. And she'd say, I'm so glad you've had such a rotten life that you can be of help to me. Mm-hmm. And I say it to other people too. Somebody will come up with something. I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, I've had that happen too. I'm so glad I've had such a rotten life that I can be of help to you. And they laugh. I regret nothing. I'm so happy of all the terrible things that have happened. And recently, one I would never have thought would become useful became useful. I was called up to do jury duty. I had to sit on a legal case. And I was not pleased. And I tried to wiggle out of it, and they wouldn't let me out of it. And so I was juror number one in the whole setup. And it turned out to be about a boat that had been damaged, and then the man, super 72-foot super yacht worth millions of dollars, and the guy's suing the insurance company. Like, my time should be spent with this. But it turns out back in my legal days, I'd had a case I absolutely hated of a boat repair. And we were working for the defense of the boat repair company, representing the insurance, meaning I'd worked exactly on this, like an almost identical case. And of course, the other side did not want me because I just learning about the facts of the case, I was ready to jump over to the defense table with the insurance company people. The plaintiff attorney got rid of me real fast. I was the first juror escorted to the door and thanked for my for my showing up. So even that random thing that I had disliked at the time became useful. I hope that whatever rotten, horrible things have happened to you, or heaven forbid, may come about in the future, you'll have an eye open for how you can help someone else. It puts it into perspective. It universalizes it to where you see, it's not just me. This is just samsara. This is just the world. This is how it is. But at least we can be of service to others. And we can get lessons for ourselves, as I also demonstrated with my other stories. So with that, I leave you today. And I'm sorry, it's a long talk. Maybe they'll divide it into 2 parts or something like that to make it something that people will listen to. Thank you and bless you.
Thank you so much, Ayya, for sharing us the Dharma sessions tonight. We'll have our Q&A sessions now.
I have to excuse myself just 1 second. There's a cat fight. My cat. Excuse me. Please go ahead. I apologize for that. The cat was attacking another cat. I had to stop that. Okay. So the question. I'm sorry. It's very small. Is it? Oh, okay. Now I made it larger. Dear Ayya, when I feel pity and wish wellness for some people who are ignorant and create a lot of when I and create a lot of distress to other people. Is that karuna, or a mixture of metta and karuna? When you feel pity and wish wellness for them, yeah, it's just depending on how you're doing it. So karuna is holding the pain of others with an open heart, no separation between me and you. That is compassion, karuna. Metta is an upwelling of well-wishing from a place of happiness, joy, abundance, like it's abundance of the heart. Like, I wish well to you. So I would say, if what the angle that you're going at is that you see that they are creating suffering for themselves, even as they are creating suffering for others, then I would say, yeah, that is karuna. And that reminds me, I'm so glad about that question. That reminds me that regarding at this particular moment in time, we're getting terrible reports of the attack of the Russian military on very innocent people of Ukraine. This is it's quite disturbing, and many terrible military things have happened all throughout our history as humans, but this one is playing out live on our phones, and so horrific. And so I like to dedicate merits of this talk, of the giving of Dhamma, of listening to Dhamma, of adjusting whatever views you may have done in accordance with Dhamma, taking time apart for this. I like to share all of these beautiful, powerful the spiritual force of this, the meritorious force of this, with all the people who have lost their lives in the attack on that country. That all those beings who have abruptly lost their lives may be comforted and may move on according to excellent good karma, and not be hindered by this mode of death, and not hindered by attachment, but may have beautiful rebirths. Also wishing merits that all the people who are frightened, suffering, endangered, that they be free of danger, free of fear, free of suffering, that their hearts be bright and strong against all the losses. And all the people who are outside the country now, separated from their loved ones, may they also be strong and uplifted. We can also share merits with everyone who is suffering, has suffered from losses of COVID, or fighting for breath right now, that they be well. Or that those who have passed on have a beautiful rebirth. May all who have passed away, all of our relatives, all of our loved ones, all of our pet loved ones, all of our loved ones, and all of those that we've heard about or imagined who need merit, may they all have beautiful rebirths, going from brightness to brightness, goodness to goodness, until they attain Nibbana in this Buddha dispensation, by the power of the goodness of our coming together today. Thank you for reminding me of that. So I have been, of course, sending well-wishing to the citizens of Ukraine. Also sending well-wishing to the military men and very young men, some of them doing the attacking, wishing that they go home immediately, intact, and they earn no more bad karma. And I would say, yeah, that's compassion, karuna, rather than metta, loving kindness. Dear Ayya, how do we identify if the inner voice is of good or evil, and if it's right for us to follow? How do you know whether a friend is a good friend or a bully? What are the results of following them in the past? You can know the tone of voice. Just like you discern among people, discern among the voices that come up in your heart, in your mind. You can know them by past association. You can know them by how you feel contemplating what they are telling you. You can know them by the past fruits of following them. Use your common sense, basically. Common sense. Use a huge helping of common sense. Um, Something I do when there's a big decision to be done, and I'm not sure, getting a little too much input mentally. What I do is I wait for a moment when my mind is bright and uplifted, just some kind of ordinary level of uplift, like just had a nice interaction with somebody or something, just in a balanced kind of place in the moment. And then I turn my mind to thinking, let's say I do this option. And and I'm living in the context of having done that option. How do I feel? I feel my belly. I feel my gut. And it might feel like, yeah, or it might feel like, good. And then I think, what if I do this other option? How does that feel? And I might feel like, yeah, like a upwelling of energy and happiness. Or I might feel like a sinking feeling or a tightness in the belly. Or I might feel neither. If I feel neither, then it's not time to make the decision. Premature. If I feel clearly one or the other, I follow it, definitely. I follow, in accordance with what lifts up. Even if the thing looks difficult, I don't regret it. Not so far. Obeying the one that makes the belly sink is always regrettable. I do.
Thank you so much for Ayya for answering all the questions from our audience and also performed the Anumodana just now. Yeah, we appreciate that. On behalf of the monk and management of Mahavihara, we would like to thank Ayya for her time and sharing her Dharma knowledge with us. We would also like to express our gratitude to our sponsors for their kind donations and all our audience tonight for joining us. Good night, everyone.
Would you please name the sponsors? It was out of compassion to me that they did not have the running line with the names of the sponsors because I told them it would make me dizzy. So, yes, there we
Yes,
go. Excellent.
and
Much
yeah.
merit to you folks.
Um, is there any last word from Aye before we end our live session tonight?
If you've hung on this long, you've been sitting for a very long time, and sadhu to you. And I'll just give a quick blessing. Bhavatu Samba Mangalang Rakhandi Samba Devata Samba Buddhanubhavena Samba Dhammanubhavena Samba Sanghanubhavena Sada Sati Pavandute. May there be every good blessing. May the angels protect you. By the power of all wisdom, by the power of all truth, by the power of all the saints, the Buddha, the Dhamma Sangha. May you ever be well.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you again, Aye and everybody tonight. We wish you a very good evening, Sukhi Hantu, and good night.